All right, here we are back from the pumpkin farm now to the pumpkin laboratories where we can start working on getting the goop out of the pumpkin. Now the next thing I do is cut the bottom out. The reason we cut the bottom out instead of the top is this way you don't have to worry about the top falling in, and later on when we go to light it I can just set the pumpkin over if you want to use a candle, that would be fine to get the nice aroma. Or I use a string of Christmas tree lights and then just set the pumpkin over the top. And we'll talk about that later. Okay, I normally cut a hole in the bottom so that my hand can get through, and I go along what the bumps are on the pumpkin here. Now I am going to draw a line across here to remind myself to cut this in half before I take it out. So I'll cut around and then cut in half, because I have found if you cut the entire thing out, you poke it in there and then you can't get it out. Okay, so now I'm using the big bottom cutter saw. Okay, now you can see that it would have been difficult to get this out if I hadn't cut it in half. You do this usually once or twice and you forget to cut the bottom, and you stop forgetting to cut the bottom in half. All right, now I love to have the seeds for roasting, so before I scoop the rest of the goop, I am going to just use my hand and then put the seeds in the bowl here. So I just kind of scrape the seeds off. And when you do roasted seeds, you don't have to get all the strings off or wash them or do anything like that. That looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is pick one of the two scoops. If you've got a bigger pumpkin or a bigger hand, you might want to use the bigger scoop, or you can use the smaller scoop. On this particular pumpkin, it's somewhat small, so I'm going to use the smaller scoop. I usually hold it this way, and then I'm going to put it in and scrape along. So it's going in this way. I will start scraping, and what I will do is keep rotating, scraping the goop, rotating, scraping. All right. What I've done now is scooped all the way around the inside, and I'm going to show you that I normally would dump this in a waste paper basket, but it's easier to see here. All of it just comes out. And then what I'll do is I'll look inside and see what area still needs to get the goop out. Okay, now the next part will be thinning the area where I was going to carve. So if you remember right, this is the area that the pattern is going to be. So what I'm going to do is scrape this area so that it's about an inch thick. If it's thicker than that, it makes it much more difficult to carve, and but you don't want to get it too thin. Now, if kids are doing it, you probably want to get it thinner than 1 inch, because it'll be a lot easier to carve because you're not carving through such a thick area. After I have put the pattern on, I can double check by poking through one of the pattern lines and seeing whether I really have it an inch thick or not.